purpose. She told them they didn't have much time to waste. Knowing the danger, she suggested a new plan. They would carefully sense the energy around the area, checking out the monster without getting too close. Confident in her plan, Lin Yi believed that by sensing the monster's energy from a distance, her team would be safe enough. She found a spot high in a tree and began to meditate, surrounding herself in a protective bubble of blue spiritual energy. From a clifftop far away, Fang Yi watched them. He was impressed by their caution, noting they had chosen a distance that was both safe and good for cultivating. He gave credit to his top student cousin for correctly figuring out the best range, a position that was neither too reckless nor too timid. As Yi's cultivation grew stronger, the spiritual energy around her began to surge. Fang Yi watched in surprise, realizing she was about to have a breakthrough to the 3-star Ghost Axe realm. He was genuinely impressed. His cousin was truly talented. In a bright flash of blue light, she successfully broke through. Her teammates watched in awe, amazed that she had already reached such a high level of power. However, the huge energy disturbance from her breakthrough did not go unnoticed. Deep in the forest, the sleeping roots of the giant vine began to twist and glow with a scary green light. The pioneers felt the ground shake, and one of the men looked back in alarm. The whole group panicked as the monstrous vine began moving directly toward them, its tendrils bursting from the earth. The team's leader was shocked that the creature could have possibly sensed them from so far away. The vine's attack was fast and brutal. Vicious green tendrils shot up from the ground, trapping 2 of the male pioneers. The rest of the squad scattered in fear as their friends screamed for them to run, warning that if they didn't escape now, they would all die there. The team's leader quickly realized what caused the disaster. Yi's breakthrough had created too much of a disturbance, getting the monster's attention. As she shouted a warning, dark green tendrils began to wrap around Yi's protective bubble, which was still shielding her while she was weak after her breakthrough. The leader knew they couldn't get caught. Once the vine wrapped around them, its deathly aura would eat them instantly. Under the immense pressure, Yi's energy shield began to crack. Chaos broke out as the red-haired leader tried to pull her panicked friend to safety. The friend screamed that they couldn't leave Yi behind, but the leader replied desperately, asking what she was supposed to do. She furiously asked if she should use her own precious spiritual energy to protect Yi, basically dying so her teammate could level up. As chaos erupted around them, the red-haired leader tried to calm one of her male teammates, who was arguing that they should leave Lin Yi to save themselves. He coldly said that life and death were up to fate, and if they didn't leave right away, they would all die with her. He reminded her that they were all just people who had met by chance, and that she was being too emotional. This cold, practical view, however, only made the leader angrier. She shoved him aside, shouting that she would not leave her teammate, even if it meant going against the rest of them. From his clifftop spot, Fang Yi watched the scene. He knew his cousin, still just a student, was probably unaware of how much danger she was in as she remained weak in her meditative state. The vine's power was overwhelming, and he wasn't sure if even he could save her with his current strength. But he knew he had to act fast, as the tendrils were already starting to crush her protective barrier. He clenched his fist, a golden aura flaring around him. He had made a promise to his aunt to take care of her, and a promise made must be kept. The red-haired leader jumped into action, leaping through the grabbing vines to reach Yi. She landed a powerful kick against one of the tendrils, breaking it with the force of the hit. But her victory didn't last long. Dozens more vines shot out, wrapping around her and trapping her completely. Just as the vines were about to crush her, Yi's protective shield finally broke. But before the monstrous plant could grab its new victims, Fang Yi stepped in. Leaping through the air, he sent out 2 arcs of bright golden energy from his sword. The rest of Yi's squad could only watch in horror, screaming her name as they saw her shield break. A massive, fiery, phoenix-shaped blast of energy shot down from the sky, hitting the mass of vines with explosive force. Fang Yi landed gracefully in the now cleared area, a small pillar of golden flame rising from the ground where he stood, having saved both his cousin and her brave leader just in time. As Fang Yi floated in a bright aura of golden light, just his presence was enough to overwhelm the deathly vine. The surviving members of the pioneer squad watched in stunned silence as the monstrous plant, which had just been moments from killing them all, stopped its attack and began to pull back from the overwhelming yang energy. The tendrils pulled back from the intense light, hissing and dissolving as they retreated. As Fang Yi came down, surrounded in a radiant glow, the pioneers could only cover their eyes from the blinding light, barely able to understand what was happening. The practical male pioneer who had suggested leaving Yi was completely shocked, questioning if this newcomer was another another pioneer. The red-haired leader, just as stunned, recognized the power for what it was, the purest form of the Yang attribute. She knew that only a high-tier power of this level could possibly push back such a powerful, life-draining monster. The male pioneer had a crisis of confidence. He had always thought of himself as extremely talented, having reached the 3-star Ghost Axe realm in a very short time, a feat few in the country could match. He knew that even the talented Lin Yi's skill barely matched his own, and yet this mysterious stranger was on a completely different level. He looked down at his own hands, then up at the glowing figure on the clifftop, feeling completely insignificant. If pioneers like that existed, he wondered, then what were they? The newcomer hadn't just beaten him, he had beaten all of them with his pure, overwhelming power. As Fang Yi stood bathed in the golden light of his power, his system activated. It had detected the extreme wood attribute from the deathly vine and had started the auto-writing process, quickly finishing a new technique. The system window then showed the details of his new ability. Endless Vitality, a technique that could instantly absorb all nearby life force to quickly heal injuries. As the power of the vine flowed into him, he was surrounded in a surge of green, life-giving energy. He was amazed at the incredible wood attribute technique he had just gotten, realizing that as long as there was life nearby, he now had what was basically a non-stop energy-absorbing engine. As Fang Yi absorbed the last of the anomaly's power, his system successfully extracted the vine's main attribute. A notification confirmed it. Extracted attribute, Desolation. The system described its scary power, the ability to instantly create a desolate aura that would destroy all surrounding life. Fang Yi stood calmly in the swirling green energy, fully taking in the new power. When he opened his eyes, they glowed with the same vibrant green as the desolate vine. He stood in the now lifeless clearing, a faint green aura around him. He now understood why the vine could only grow in such a dangerous, remote place. If it grew anywhere else, it would drain every bit of life for miles around. He thought about the ruthless nature of the Desolation attribute, a powerful force that forcibly stole the life force of others. His thoughts were interrupted by a grateful voice. The red-haired leader of the pioneer group approached, her clothes torn and her body bruised, but she was alive. She thanked him greatly, saying that without him, they would all be dead. She then asked how they could possibly repay him for saving their lives. Fang Yi simply waved her off, coolly telling her there was no need and that they would meet again someday. He then turned and walked away. In his mind, however, he didn't feel like a hero. He knew that he had only found this opportunity because of their information. In his mind, he was the one who had benefited from the situation. As for the conflict he had seen among the pioneers, he wasn't concerned. With a final leap, he launched himself into the air, leaving the stunned squad behind. He knew that people's true characters are easily shown in a crisis, and a disorganized team like theirs would not be safe in the dangerous new era. Left in the empty clearing, the adventurous girl and the shaggy-haired man watched him go. The girl, still in shock, wondered aloud what they should do now. The man, however, answered her with a bitter, blaming tone, asking if she now regretted her earlier hesitation to save their teammates. With the immediate threat gone, and Lin Yi now at the 3rd tier, the red-haired leader knew their best option was to stick together. Sometime later, Yi's eyes opened, glowing a brilliant blue as she came out of her meditation. Her teammates rushed to her side, relieved she was finally awake. The male pioneer who had suggested leaving her now said that their fate depended on their leader's wisdom, but another teammate said their focus should be on the mysterious stranger who had saved them. Still confused, Yi asked what had happened, noticing her other teammates lying unconscious on the ground. She stood up and was immediately hit by the powerful burning warmth of a leftover Yang attribute on a nearby tree. She could feel its intense heat even from a distance. The shaggy-haired man then stepped forward, offering to explain what had happened while she was unconscious. Later that day, back in front of her cousin's apartment, Yi was still trying to understand the incredible events. She couldn't believe that someone so powerful actually existed. Her teammates' words echoed in her mind. He had called the mysterious pioneer a monster. He had described how the vines they couldn't even scratch had been easily pushed back by his power, and how the massive beanstalk had retreated far into the sky, no longer daring to come near them. Such was the overwhelming presence of the man who had saved them. She knew that even though he was long gone, the vine was still calm, a sign of his lingering power. She opened the door to the apartment and was surprised to find Fang Yi there to greet her. He looked at her with concern, noticing that she looked a little pale. Yi Yi quickly pulled herself together, forcing a smile as she brushed off his concern, blaming her tiredness on a long day of studying. Fang Yi accepted her excuse, telling her she had worked hard and should go rest. He offered to order takeout for dinner, and she agreed before heading to her room. Once inside, she collapsed onto her bed, completely exhausted. She knew that breakthroughs were mentally draining, requiring a lot of concentration. She felt more tired than if she had stayed up for a month straight. Lying on her bed and scrolling through her phone, she felt a sense of relief. She was no longer an ordinary person. She wouldn't die from a few all-nighters. She accepted that this constant, life-threatening struggle was the fate of a pioneer in a world where things had begun to change. She thought of her cousin's seemingly normal, peaceful life and knew that such a life was no longer possible for her. Her quiet thoughts were interrupted by a new message in her Pioneer group chat. It was from a user named Jiaolan, the mysterious, powerful member who was usually absent. Jiaolan had sent a simple, direct message. "If there are any more traces of that strong man, please inform me." This was the first time Jiaolan had ever spoken in the group, and it immediately got Yi Yi's attention. She replied, agreeing to the request, before asking her own question to the group. She asked if they thought the man who had saved them could be the same one from the Dark River Lava Dragon incident, and if so, why he would have helped them. The group chat immediately lit up with a post about the mysterious high-tier Yang attribute master. The post described his sun-splitting slash in great detail, telling how the witness had been forced out of the cave by a blast of white-hot light. The author of the post declared with total certainty that no other pioneer in the Xia country could match his power, and warned everyone to stay away if they ever met him. Meanwhile, Fang Yi was heading out for the evening on his bicycle. He was confident that after the day's events, his cousin would have let her guard down around him, letting him come and go without making her suspicious. With his new freedom, he had a new mission in mind. It was time to find a suitable carrier for his new desolation attribute. He knew that this power was most compatible with plants, and he pedaled off into the night to begin his search. As he rode through the night, Fang Yi thought about the best way to use his newly acquired desolation attribute. He knew that despite its power, it was still a bad attribute at its core, based on destruction and decay. He worried that putting it on his own body could lead to bad reactions. Furthermore, he was concerned that its evil nature might conflict with the good, purifying power of his thunder attribute. He decided that the best solution would be to find a carrier for the attribute, something like the strange vine itself. He guessed that the original vine monster had been born when a regular plant sensed the return of rich spiritual energy and chose to evolve, creating the desolation attribute as a way to gather more power. With this in mind, a plan began to form in his mind. With a confident smirk, he knew exactly where he needed to go. He followed a moonlit road, guided by a sign pointing toward the forest park. He arrived at the large urban park and left his bike, going into the woods. Under the bright full moon, he walked through a field of vibrant, glowing flowers. He knew he needed to find the perfect lucky one, a plant that could create the greatest connection with his own spiritual energy and show a sense of closeness to him. Closing his eyes, he focused, reaching out with his own spiritual energy. A vibrant green aura flowed from him, spreading throughout the forest and covering the plants. He could feel a response from the plants, a wave of their own spiritual energy rising up to meet his. He noted that while their response was a lot, it still wasn't strong enough for what he needed. As Fang Yi continued to send out his spiritual energy, he realized he needed a much stronger response from the plants around him. Suddenly, he stopped, his attention drawn to a specific spot in the forest. There, in the tall grass, a single white flower with a glowing center gently swayed, as if calling to him. He wondered if this was the one he had been searching for. He approached it carefully and reached out his finger. As his fingertip touched it, the flower's petals closed around it, and he could feel it absorbing the spiritual energy he was giving off. The flower then bloomed again, seemingly happy, as if it had just had a good meal. Fang Yi knelt beside the flower, a small smile on his face. He noted its strong spirituality. Though it was just a plant, it had reacted to his touch like a greedy puppy, eagerly eating his spiritual energy and then rubbing against his fingers for more. He knew he had found his carrier. Out of the entire forest, this small flower had the strongest reaction to his aura, making it the perfect container for the desolation attribute. He told the flower that it was the chosen one and asked if it was ready. Without waiting for an answer, he unleashed a vortex of green spiritual energy, focusing it entirely on the small white flower. A system window appeared, asking for confirmation. Do you want to forcibly implant the desolation attribute into this plant? With his eyes glowing a vibrant green, he gave his consent. A brilliant light erupted from his hand as the flower began to transform, its petals opening into a much larger, more complex, and powerful form. The implantation process was finished in a bright flash of green light. Fang Yi was surprised for a moment by the sudden burst of power. The small, simple white flower had been completely changed. Its petals had opened into a beautiful, lotus-like flower, and its leaves had grown thick and bright, all of it glowing with a powerful green aura. The newly powered flower immediately began to show its influence. It released a massive wave of desolation energy, its roots digging into the ground as it drew power. The effect was instant and destructive. The green, healthy forest around Fang Yi was drained of its life in seconds, the trees dying and the ground turning to dust. He was amazed at the pure, evil power of the desolation attribute. In just a few moments, the energy had eaten the entire section of the forest and was still spreading quickly. As the flower's light began to fade and its form shrank to a smaller size, Fang Yi knew he had to leave. If he let the process go on any longer, the huge energy disturbance would surely get the attention of the Spiritual Energy Association. He reached down and plucked the glowing flower from the ground, roots and all. He knew this park was a risky place for such an experiment. Being so close to the city center, it was certainly watched by the association, who were worried about how the spiritual energy revival could turn even normal plants into dangerous threats. He had noticed the increased number of security cameras and the lack of any other people in the park when he arrived. As he walked away, holding his new prize, he noticed something incredible. The flower was still absorbing energy from the air, surviving and even doing well without its roots connected to the earth. He looked at it more closely, a smile of wonder on his face. He found it magical that its spirituality hadn't weakened at all since being pulled up, especially since it had been just an ordinary wildflower moments before he chose it. This led him to a deep conclusion. By giving the desolation attribute to the plant, he had unlocked its evolutionary potential, setting it on a path to becoming something far greater than it was ever meant to be. Just as Fang Yi was about to leave the park, a loud alarm blared through the forest, its red light flashing. A loud robotic voice gave a serious warning. Abnormal value exceeded. Fang Yi immediately realized that even though he tried to be quick, he had still set off the park's monitoring system. With no time to waste, he grabbed his newly acquired desolation flower and quickly left. Miles away, in a high-tech control room labeled Spiritual Energy Revival Plant Research Department, the same alarms blared. Technicians scrambled, shouting that the anomaly value was going crazy and demanding to know what was happening. An order was quickly given. All staff were to put on their protective bracelets, enter the park, and immediately block off the area, stopping anyone from entering or leaving. A team in full protective gear entered the now lifeless section of the forest. One member checked the reading on his wrist device, which showed a dangerously high value of 30. He noted that this was terrifyingly high. For comparison, the incident at Qingcheng University had only ranged between 8 and 10, and even the powerful Dark River Lava Dragon had peaked at 25. Another team member added that the park's original spiritual energy level had never even gone above 10. As one of the researchers took a soil sample, another reported his strange findings. The air humidity, surface temperature, and sunlight were all completely normal. Yet, all the plants in the area looked as if they had been drained of their life in a matter of seconds. The team leader decided they needed to get closer to the center to figure out what kind of spiritual attribute could have caused such an event. However, as one of the members stepped forward, another researcher with glasses, who seemed to be a senior member, shouted at him to stop and not get any closer. He warned them with serious authority not to touch anything, identifying the leftover energy as the desolation attribute. He then asked if any of them knew about the vine that had recently come down from the sky. The younger researchers were stunned into silence. One of them finally found his voice, realizing with growing horror that the senior researcher was talking about the infamous, devil-like vine that had already been classified as an A-level mutation. The senior researcher confirmed their fears. Standing before a ghostly image of the vine with the souls of its victims trapped at its base, he explained the source of its terrifying power. The reason it was so deadly, the reason it had killed so many pioneers, was its natural desolation attribute. A powerful parasitic ability that drained the life force from all surrounding creatures, making everything it touched its own. The young researcher, who had been about to step into the dead area, clutched his chest, sweating and gasping in terror. He thanked his superior, realizing that he had just been saved from certain death. The senior researcher explained that the area around any plant that had awakened the desolation attribute was a dead zone, where anyone who entered would have their life force eaten. He remembered seeing data on another such plant in the Xia country, a rotting ancient tree in a forbidden zone in Wan City that instantly destroyed any life that came near it. He looked around at the lifeless clearing with serious concern, noting that the mutation of plants in this new era could not be ignored. From what they knew, the desolation attribute was the strongest a plant could awaken, and now, in addition to the ancient tree and the celestial vine, a third had been born. His lecture was interrupted by a hand clapping him on the shoulder. The research team turned in surprise to see the stern face of Major Han Li, who had arrived with his own group of soldiers. The major had already been told about the situation. He ordered all the researchers on site to change into the advanced protective suits his men had brought and to follow him into the contaminated area. With Major Han Li leading the way, the newly equipped team, now joined by Su Qingying, stepped firmly into the dead zone. As they moved forward with their scanners, they made a series of confusing discoveries. They couldn't find a source for the desolation energy, and the aura itself was quickly fading, the level having dropped to 25 in the few minutes since they arrived. This went against what they knew about the celestial vine, which was supposed to be able to move. Major Han Li turned to Su Qingying, suggesting they investigate the area more closely. She agreed, her expression serious. As Major Han Li and Su Qingying began their investigation, two members of the team with glowing blue auras started tracing the flow of the leftover spiritual energy. The energy trails led them from the outer edges of the dead zone back to a single starting point. As they got closer, they stopped, their faces filled with shock. The Major and Su Qingying realized the horrifying truth at the same time. The source of the desolation energy had been dug up and taken away. A researcher in a protective suit couldn't believe what he was hearing, questioning how such a thing was even possible. Major Han Li knew that if someone truly had the power to enter a desolation dead zone and steal its source, their identity was extremely important. Su Qingying, however, had another theory. She showed a glowing data pad to the Major, explaining that after running a big data analysis, they had found a person whose movements matched both this incident and another recent mutation. The file on the screen showed a picture of Fang Yi, his name clearly visible. Just then, Major Li told Su Qingying that he would send her all of Fang Yi's information, confirming that he was highly likely the same pioneer she had been in contact with. With that, he tipped his hat, saying the rest was up to her association to handle. Left alone in the desolate woods, Su Qingying held the datapad, her expression one of grim understanding. 2 hours later, back in his apartment, Fang Yi carefully placed his new desolation flower into a small pot. He smiled, thinking that this was his first time raising a flower. He affectionately named it the obedient little white flower, and told it that since it now had the desolation attribute, it would cultivate on its own and become a powerful helper for him. He knew its special, life-draining powers would be a great help in battle, and its simple appearance would be the perfect camouflage, easily hidden from his cousin. As he gently touched a petal, he thought that in the dangerous new world, raw power was only part of the equation. The real key to victory was having more secret weapons. Fang Yi's quiet evening was interrupted by his phone buzzing on the table. He picked it up, surprised to see the caller ID, Old Wang. He immediately recognized the name as his childhood friend, Wang Liang, whom he hadn't seen in the 3 years since he'd left to join the army. A brief flashback showed the two as close friends in their school days, a bond that was broken when Wang Liang suddenly announced his decision to enlist. Fang Yi answered the call. On the other end, Wang Liang's cheerful voice greeted him, asking if he was back in town and inviting him out for a drink at their old spot. Fang Yi was taken aback by how sudden it all was. Wang Liang just laughed, adding that he had a big secret to tell him and that he shouldn't be shocked when he heard it. However, the seemingly friendly reunion was a carefully planned setup. After hanging up the phone, it was revealed that Wang Liang was not alone. He was in a dimly lit room, reporting to a tough and heavily scarred woman with long red hair and a high-ranking military uniform. Su Qingying was also at the table. Wang Liang confirmed to the officer that he had done as instructed. He then made a special request, asking that if Fang Yi was not the person they were looking for, they would guarantee his safety. The red-haired officer tapped her finger impatiently on the table. She coldly dismissed his concern, ordering him to simply do his mission and not do anything unnecessary. With a chilling lack of feeling, she added that if Fang Yi turned out to be the wrong person, Wang Liang should just consider it a punishment for his friend. At a quiet bar, Fang Yi and Wang Liang toasted with their beer glasses. They sat and drank, catching up after being apart for 3 years. Fang Yi noticed his old friend seemed much more mature and guessed that his time in the army must have been hard. Wang Liang talked about his experiences in the military before asking Fang Yi how he had been. Fang Yi gave a simple reply, saying he was doing well and had gone to college. As he drank his beer, he thought back to his past life. In that chaotic time, he never had the chance to see Wang Liang again. He remembered that his friend, as a soldier, had probably died in some forgotten battle. He wondered if this time, in this new life, he could change his old friend's fate. Wang Liang then changed the subject, his tone becoming more serious. He asked Fang Yi if he had seen anything strange lately, like zombies or monsters from movies. Fang Yi was immediately on guard. He knew it wasn't surprising for someone in the army to know about the spiritual energy revival, but the direct question felt like a test to see what he knew. Playing dumb, Fang Yi asked what he was trying to say. Wang Liang sighed and explained that he wasn't trying to comfort him, but to warn him. He told Fang Yi that in the near future, everything they valued, education, wealth, status, would become worthless. The entire world order was about to change. Fang Yi listened closely, his face showing no emotion as he stared at his empty glass. He knew that ordinary soldiers were sworn to secrecy and couldn't leak any details about the spiritual energy revival. This confirmed his suspicion. The military had identified him as a target, and Wang Liang, his childhood friend, had been sent to test him. Wang Liang, seeing his friend's silence, tried to reassure him. He told him not to worry, that as long as he didn't reveal anything, he would be fine. But Fang Yi understood the situation. Despite his pretended ignorance, his friend was still trying to help him. Even at the risk of breaking military rules, Wang Liang was kindly warning him to be careful of the coming changes. Their conversation was suddenly cut short when Wang Liang's phone began to vibrate urgently. He answered the call, and a furious voice on the other end ordered him to return to his team immediately and report to the target location within 10 minutes. Wang Liang snapped to attention, accepting the order as Fang Yi watched in silence. He immediately jumped up, apologizing to Fang Yi and explaining that he had an urgent mission and couldn't see him home. As his friend was about to leave, Fang Yi dropped his act. He asked if the mission was related to the spiritual energy revival and told his friend to take him along. Wang Liang stopped, turning back to look at Fang Yi with a mix of shock and confusion. Fang Yi stood up and grabbed his friend by the collar. He told Wang Liang to take him to see his superiors, letting him know that he was aware of the real reason for their meeting. He reassured his friend, telling him that while he didn't know exactly what his superiors knew, he knew Wang Liang would never hurt him. He explained that he was more interested in what the military was dealing with, knowing it had to be related to the great changes happening in the world. Since the Spiritual Energy Association was already handling the monsters, he was curious what the military's role was, and he wanted to see it for himself. Wang Liang agreed, and the two of them walked toward a massive, heavily guarded military base in a mountain valley, labeled Military No. 19 Spiritual Forbidden Zone. As they got closer, Fang Yi was struck by the incredibly dense spiritual energy in the area. He noted that the concentration level was so high it had likely surpassed a standard pollution zone. As they were met by a squad of soldiers, one of them ordered Wang Liang to return to his team. After a quick check, the soldiers allowed Fang Yi to enter the base, leading him through a brightly lit corridor. Inside the military base, Fang Yi and Wang Liang were led into a massive, cavern-like training ground. There, a large group of soldiers was in a desperate battle, using crackling blue energy to hold back a monstrous, spiky black creature with a single glowing red eye. The beast fought back with fierce power, shooting a devastating beam of red energy that tore through the soldiers' ranks, causing cries of pain and fear. Standing on a raised platform, the tough, red-haired officer watched the scene with a critical eye. Fang Yi, who had been brought before her, immediately recognized the creature's power as a mix of two different attributes. The officer confirmed his thought, saying the monster was a perfect mix of the dark and flame attributes, making it exceptionally fierce and cruel. She added that it had already seriously injured several of her soldiers. A caption identified her as a 3-star Ghost Axe Realm officer named Ji Royan. Spotting Wang Liang, she barked his name, and he immediately stood at attention. She furiously asked why he had brought an unauthorized person into a restricted area, but before he could explain, she cut him off. Her expression softened a little as she told him to forget it, explaining that the situation was urgent and they needed him to join the formation immediately. She then turned her attention to Fang Yi. She saw nothing special about him, noting that his spiritual energy was only slightly active. She briefly wondered if he was the powerful pioneer they were looking for, but dismissed the thought, knowing she had to focus on the battle. She gave him a stern warning. Since he was Wang Liang's friend, she wouldn't say much, but he was in a restricted area, and his life was now his own responsibility. He was also sworn to secrecy about anything he saw. Fang Yi simply replied that he understood. With that done, Ji Royan took command. She picked up a massive energy cannon and shouted the names of 2 of her soldiers. The 2 men immediately jumped into action, their bodies covered in blue energy as they fought the monster up close. Ji Royan then aimed her cannon and fired a massive blast